Welcome, everybody. I'm Maury Weinstein, president and co-founder of System Source, broadcasting from beautiful downtown Hunt Valley, Maryland today. It's a beautiful day here. And the topic today is staying ahead of the hackers by evolving your security approach. I think you've all shared the importance of that because you signed up for today's session. I have included my email address and home phone number in case you find something that I need to hear as the leader of this organization, or something that doesn't feel right, something that doesn't make sense, maybe something happening in your operations that it's moving you backwards. I'm happy to talk to you about it anytime. You're welcome to note what you want to learn today in the question box. We have reviewed the ones that came in during registration time, and actually I've rejiggered the presentation slightly to meet those questions. But any questions you have, don't hesitate to put them in the question box. Chat box is fine too. We hope you're enjoying your pizza. If you haven't received your pizza, Domino's not perfect yet. Please check your front door or reception desk. Sometimes that's the same place. And then contact Julie at that email address in front of you. And welcome. During the webinar, we'll be in presentation mode, and reminder to view the webinar in full screen mode. The data will make a lot more sense if you can see it clearly. We talked about submitting questions. Don't hesitate at any time. And there will be an evaluation just after the webinar finishes so we can learn from your comments. Today's management event is really part of a much bigger series. Today is up here, but there's lots of other ones. I hope you've enjoyed some of these or will enjoy them in the future. The next one up will be the security lessons from Verizon's analysis of 30,000 security incidents. And I haven't updated that because the Verizon report was issued Friday afternoon. So it's about 20,000 this year of lessons learned from about 20,000 security incidents. I have upgraded today's presentation to reflect the latest data. So it was a long weekend on that one. Hope you enjoy it. Upcoming webinars are right in front of you. We run 3 or 4 a month, courtesy of Julie's expertise. Thanks, Julie, for putting together today's event. Securing your Microsoft Azure infrastructure is coming up next using the consulting experience of Dave Ferg on our staff. And there's all kinds of fun ones, building smarter reports with Power BI, courtesy of our Learning Center. And I'll be back for proactive steps required for cyber insurance claims to be paid in full and to minimize premiums in late May. You can sign up at syssource.com or just watch your email screen. We use the System Source wheel to tell our story. It'll be about 15 seconds. We'll go to commercial, and then we'll get right into the meat of our presentation. Many of our clients and prospects come to us to help them mature their IT operations and audiovisual work. We use our training center to train end users and help desk personnel, technical personnel in lots of different areas. We've trained over 300,000 students since starting the training center in 1983. We train for higher productivity, lower help desk costs, hopefully. Presentation systems is where we keep the folks that do our auditoriums and classroom building. All the Teams room systems are all in that area. Bit of a construction team also. Consulting is where we keep our heavy hitters. These folks average 29 years of tenure with System Source. They do all of our cloud migrations, all of our security assessments, all of that is done in our consulting area. Cloud services is code word for our data center. We've been running a data center in our Hunt Valley headquarters since 1995. So we took our cloud blinders off many years ago. Today, most of our work is done at Azure and AWS, of course. Service and support can be done 2 different directions. One is reactively, where you call us when it all falls apart. Not easy to handle, and we still handle some of that work, but much of our support has wandered to managed services, where we're responsible for entire environments. If we maintain efficiently enough, there may be enough money left over in the budget to refresh the environment once in a while. We do have our configuration and warehousing facility in our Hunt Valley headquarters. I should also mention our computer museum. Our computer museum is probably the 3rd largest in the US at this time, 2nd largest on the East Coast, and I hope you've got a chance to visit. There's a lot of great stuff there, a lot of great stories. We used the COVID period to double down or triple down in our museum. I was inspecting the museum overstock yesterday. We have 15,000 square feet of just overstock. Here's today's agenda: evolving security approach by a number of ways. One is using the latest data from the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report. And that was issued, as I mentioned, on Friday, so it made for a long weekend. But you will see the latest information in just a moment. Should we add security layers? Should we timely patch? All of these are important questions. Some of you have come to talk about AI, work from home, and there's lots of other tactical hints here that hopefully will benefit your organization. Starting off with the messages. I'm very much into how management sends messages. Our message that we started off the security approach with is our internal and client security posture started at red alert. Red alert is very difficult to sustain over a long period of time, and I've brought the alert down to yellow alert. But the first step in approaching a difficult issue like security, in my estimation, is to write down where we are and be honest about it. So let's run right into the Verizon 2025 report. Almost 100 organizations contributed to the 2025 report this year, everyone from Akamai to Zscaler, including Secret Service and lots of other organizations. The report lists threats, vulnerabilities, and actions for about 22,000 security incidents. And the data breaches, which is a subset of 22,000, is 12,200. That is about 50%. I remember when the subset was about 5%. So we'll talk about why that's true. Let's define the terms incident and data breaches. Incidents are when security penetration has been proven, and data breaches is where data has been proven to be lost. Two different pieces. Data breaches is a subset of the incidents. We'll be spending most of the time on the more serious category, which is data breaches. I should note that the Verizon report is 117 pages, probably not bedtime reading, but there's a little humor in there. They try. And I've really created a synopsis of it for the presentation today. I'm not getting into the 9 industries using NASCS codes, including education, which I presented this morning to one of the large universities here in the area. Also, manufacturing, professional services, and public sector, and so on, are all categorized separately. So having data, if you're in one of those industries, that's tailored to your work, very helpful. I should note from a big picture that we use the Verizon report as our Bible. This is how we try to figure out what to invest in, what to advise our customers in. We really don't spend all day looking at the zillion emails that come in from our manufacturers, Fortinet this, Cisco that try to be unbiased, but just don't have the credibility that the Verizon report has. It is in its 18th year, so some of you have come in today for understanding the trends in security. So Verizon does help us with that, being in its 18th year. Coverage is broad, victims in 139 countries. Verizon notes that it is a sample of convenience. What that means is depending on what organizations contribute this year, there could be a slight move in the data. We'll see a little bit of that. Should be noted that the CrowdStrike event, which all of us are still living down, didn't impact us, but many of our prospects and other businesses here in Baltimore. The CrowdStrike event was included as an availability-only incident, but it's probably underrepresented, Verizon says, because of the lack of public data on affected customers. Not everyone announced it, they just put it to bed. So it's probably underrepresented in today's report. So let's jump right in. Some of you are here to talk about AI and to figure out what the emerging threats are. And it's going to be an interesting set of slides, just a few of them. So the emerging threat, as Verizon assesses it, is largely the potential for corporate sensitive data to be leaked. So here's the data. 15% of employees are routinely accessing Gen AI systems on their corporate devices. That's at least once every 15 days. Okay, so we believe that, 15%. Now, of that 15%, what's going on? And the answer is 72% of the 15 are using a non-corporate email as the identifier for their account. That's a yikes. Because depending on what that non-corporate email identifier is, they may not be protecting their data against incorporating it into the model. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, do put a question into the question box. We'll get back to it. That's 72%. There's another 17%, maybe some overlap, I suppose, that are using their corporate email without a integrated authentication system. So there's no SAML, there's no SSO. They're probably not AD integrated, indicating that these systems may not be part of the sanctioned applications allowed in corporate environments. So there's some scary numbers there. And this, I forgot what they call this chart. This glymph is what they call this. Hopefully I said that right. Shows what we're talking about. Corporate not integrated, personal, that's 72% there in green. So this is a hot topic, and I expect that's why some of you have attended today. Now, there is another emerging risk coming up that I sense you know something about, where AI is being integrated into the operating system of some of the newest mobile devices. With so many of the core functions like voice assistant, messaging apps, cameras leveraging those models, there's bound to be some exposure. And of course, that's not just on mobile. You may be seeing that coming around the corner with Microsoft Recall, as it was originally set up to take a picture of the screen every 20 seconds. And of course, now Recall you can turn off. I think it's probably off by default in the Windows 11 implementations. So let's take a look at another AI thought. Mimecast allowed Verizon to reproduce their findings about using AI to write emails. So the green vertical line right in front of you, I've highlighted in yellow, is when large language models, LLM-based chat tools became more popular. So the findings before that, right over here on the left-hand side, could be attributed largely to machine translation, grammar correction services like Grammarly. So you can see the line is not accelerating. So that does tell us that while the percentage of AI-assisted malicious emails, which is the Verizon headline of the moment, jumped up from 5 to 10%, right? 5 to 10% over the past 2 years, we're not seeing the wild growth rates, especially with the green line showing before and after the LLMs came in, the AI came in. Just not seeing acceleration here. So while there's plenty to be scared about in the AI world, it doesn't appear that this is one of them. Verizon also took a look at state-sponsored actors. These are the guys who have quite a bit of resources who are working for some of our enemies. But they found that they're just like legitimate organizations in their AI implementations. Attempts are being made, some improvements are being found, no revolution yet. So we're just not seeing the stamping on the accelerator, the acceleration of AI in malicious email assembly. Getting back to the non-AI portion of the Verizon report, there are some interesting trends, and I suspect some of you have attended today for some of the trends in order to best address your organization security issues. The 60% is not one of them. That's down a little bit from prior year. By the way, you can see the size of the sample set. That N, that is 10,800 breaches. So we're talking about a serious sample set. There's nothing anecdotal about the data we're looking at. But there is something important here, and that is breaches involving third party. Verizon started tracking this for the first time last year, and it was 15%. Now it's doubled. So this is when the third party partner takes it out on your environment. This includes suppliers, vendors, hosting providers, outsourced IT support folks like us. Some level of trust and privileges is implied between business partners. Now, a lot of this is software vulnerabilities. Now, software vulnerabilities you may or may not classify as a breach involving third party, but the third party owns the software. And if the third party, if you were running a manufacturing shop and you got a machine that was defective from a third party, you would write them a strong letter. But in the world of software, we don't see that. But it is in this number, and it did drive from 15 to 30. So spending time evolving your security approach in this area feels worthwhile. We're going to drill down more in a moment. We did see significant growth in the espionage area, the 17% you see on the bottom of the chart. Verizon, however, says it's probably due to changes in their contributor makeup. The 100 organizations that contributed must have moved toward the state sponsor, those that are watched as state-sponsored espionage breach folks versus last year. So sometimes they can identify where changes in their contributors changes the data. Let's drill down on the second one because it went from 15 to 30%. What are the top patterns in the breaches with third-party involvement? And the answer is it's nearly all system intrusion. Now, this is the first time in today's deck that you're seeing the 80-20 rule in play. We love the 80-20 rule. We even love the 90-10 rule even better because that helps focuses our time and expense on some area. And in this case, what you're looking at is system intrusion. We're going to define system intrusion better in just a moment, but that is the top pattern in breaches with third-party involvement. And one could say, given our limited time, the rest of it may or may not be worth working on in third-party involvement. So let's explore software as a service, which is third-party vendor relationships. We should note that availability incidents like CrowdStrike are getting attentions from the cyber insurance. They don't love those claims. While there was nothing malicious happened in that particular incident, I suspect there were some cyber insurance claims, and some of them may have been large, especially among the airlines. So just the availability incidents alone, without the malicious nature of most cyber incidents, are getting attention from the cyber insurers, meaning higher rates. While you procure software, good security outcomes should be an important part of that procurement process. Having plans to address repeat vendor offenders, very important. Keeping devices away from the internet, vendors hosting your data in their environment is a sore spot. Vendors connecting to your environment, of course, is a sore spot. The gaps open up as you have vendors interfacing with your data and your work. Those gaps are where security holes open up. What we advise our managed customers to do in terms of evolving their security approaches is to ask questions like, how does the PII, the protected information, arrive from the partner? How is it sent to the partner? Does the partner retain any of it? Does the partner provide 2FA or vice versa? So we actually have a column we call System Source where we actually write down the answers to these for our managed clients. But for our clients to ask questions of other partners using this checklist or something similar, if you don't have your own checklist, you're welcome to either type this one or just put on your evaluation, say that you'd like a copy. We'd be happy to get it to you. But asking questions, unfortunately, some of the partners may or may not answer, which could lead you to some conclusions all by themselves. Very important, these questions. So here are the top breach patterns. Top breach patterns, I used North America because all the people on this call were of different industries. Many of you were from different industries. So that'll be a different webinar because we only have 60 minutes to spend together today. So for those of you in education, public sector, and so on, there will be a separate chart for you. This is the North American. This would be for those that industries were not covered by Verizon or just want a big picture. So this is 90%. So if we could conquer, and the word conquer is very difficult in the security arena, these three patterns, that would eliminate 90% of breaches. We love that 90-10 rule. Some of the industries, by the way, are 75-25, so the focus is not quite as high. Now there is a problem, and I'll show you coming up here in a moment. So system intrusion is number one. This is in rank order. These are the complex attacks, generally leveraging malware, generally ending up, I believe, at a 75% level, deploying ransomware. So that's number one. The plus sign means it's up over last year in terms of percentage. These are people lurking in your systems, being persistent, maybe over a multi-month period, increasing their authentication levels, their permission levels. That's number one. We'll get deeper into that in a moment. Number two, unfortunately, those of you with sharp eyes probably saw this already, is everything else. This is the first time we've seen this breach pattern in North America in all these years. Everything else is unfortunate. Well, it's fortunate because I didn't have to spend all weekend trying to figure out what it means. But the unfortunate part is there's little information, which means it's very difficult for us to act on it. So while we find Verizon very actionable, the data, and I hope you will too, this particular one, of course, Verizon didn't do it. It just, everything else, the bucket was so large. So we move on to social engineering. That's up over last year. That's 56% of the breaches all by itself. And you may see some overlap between these. These, of course, you know about social engineering, threat actors manipulating and victimizing us. Extortion at a 46% level. That's when data is not encrypted, but the bad guys want money in order not to publish your data That's way up over the prior year, which is why there are 2 plus signs there. Phishing at 13, pretexting at 4. So that's the 3 patterns at 90%. Let's start off with system intrusion. We talked about it as being the more complex attacks, usually exploiting vulnerabilities, stealing credentials, generally including ransomware. There's the 75% number. These are the hands-on keyboard attackers. They're using automation sometimes. They're using craft to breach defenses. The threats, of course, are 99% external, financial motive at 85, slightly less than last year. Again, we love the 80-20 rule. So if you walk around during the day, and I know all of us are busy, with the external hat on, with a financial motive hat on, that means you can put yourself in the place of these attackers. So if you can think like them on the 80 or 90% level, that's an advantage. We do see for the first time decreasing percentage of victims paying ransom. I shouldn't say the first time. You'll actually see it actually decreased over the past couple of years. But I think for the first time we've seen a decrease in the median ransom paid. And we'll get a chance to look at that in just a moment. So we do see a movement here. Widely exploited 0 days are used against organizations over a single weekend under system intrusion. And this kind of activity, these 0 days, accounts for the large increase in the vulnerability exploiting. So let's take a look at the ransom payments. This is the median number right here, 115. If you're insuring for 85 or 95% levels, that's where the million and 3.6 million come in. Here on the right-hand side, we can see the years starting 2022, 23, and 24. This is the percentage of ransom not paid. So the percent of ransom not paid has grown from 50 to 64 in those years. That apparently has produced less demand for the ransom, and the price has gone down. This 115K on the median side was 150 last year, according to Verizon. So one theory as to why the ransoms are decreasing is because fewer organizations pay. There's also some increased pressure from law enforcement takedown on these groups, and their opening amounts for requests for ransom have been lower overall. The data is generated partly because some of the contributors to the Verizon report are cyber insurance firms and also the sector known as ransomware negotiating folks. I should note that the cyber insurance firms are the ones with all the data. We'll get to talk more about that in a moment. There is additional trend that's worth talking about as you evolve your security approach. And this is a breakdown of security exploits, vulnerabilities by their common vectors. So 42% web applications, 22% VPN and edge devices. That 22% is 8x last year. So if we want an area to focus on and evolve our work, and we're going to talk more about it in today's presentation, it is in VPN and edge devices. So while the web application vulnerabilities are still up top at 42, the second category growing very fast. So Verizon says make sure your organization understands its exposure to the internet, prioritize patching those devices that really absolutely, no doubt about it, Verizon says, must touch the outside world. So how are we doing on patching and how are the hackers doing? Which one of us have the upper hand is really the question. So this on the left-hand side is the difference in days between when a vulnerability is announced, that's the CVE date, and when there is a known exploited vulnerability, that's a KEV, known exploited vulnerability. And the answer is for non-edge devices, it's about 5 days. For edge devices, it's 0. So these exploits are coming at us very fast. So between the announcement of the CVE, the patch needed, the vulnerability is really what it is, with whatever is known about it, and the exploit of that vulnerability is 0 days on edge patches, edge devices. So how are we doing on patching? Well, here on the right-hand side is edge patching. Here's all CVEs. On the left-hand side, that's an N of 14 million, 13 million data points. And here's the known exploited vulnerabilities here in the middle. So what you're seeing here, which is interesting, is that the edge devices are getting the attention that they need because the remediation percentage, 53%, which is nothing to write home about, but at least it's better than the 38% or the 9% in the middle or left. So the edge devices are getting some attention, and Verizon reminds us to keep pushing on that pedal. Verizon does talk about the fact that partial remediation is at 17. So Verizon says, look, we're the optimists. Ever the optimists, they say, we choose to believe that the partially remediated folks have taken proper steps to mitigate the exposure of the devices still showing as vulnerable. Maybe they took them and put them behind a web firewall or something. But watch out for the partial remediations. This data covers 10,000 companies with a sample of 17 vulnerabilities across 7 vendors. So they're not picking one. They're looking at the big picture here. So watch for partial remediation. Here's one at 85%. In the middle, KEVs are still getting partially remediated at 51% level. I did not see the time frame in the report. Verizon handles data fairly well, but when you read it carefully, the 117 pages, it's not perfect. As for the unremediated, which is down here at the bottom, Verizon says, good luck. Now, we know that patching is a bit of a lost art. It's very boring work, and that it only happens when managers pay attention to their staff, ask questions about it. We'll talk more about that in 1 second. We know this here at System Source because we measure the patch score of inbound clients to our managed services portion of our business. And over the zillion years we've been doing this, the inbound score holds at about 35% or lower. It's almost embarrassing. There are some people who have convinced me beforehand that they're the ones that are exception to this rule. It doesn't happen very often. Now, we're able to take these scores up into the mid-90s with attention in a couple weeks. But having this number in front of you, knowing the history of it, knowing that this work probably doesn't appear at this level unless you ask questions about it. Which brings me to my management note for today. I suggest to you that we could reduce security incidents by half. This is anecdotal. By doing only 4 things. Asking only 4 questions once a quarter as managers. 1, what's your phish prone percentage from your phishing campaigns? 2 is what your backup completion percentage is. 3, what's your patch score, which you see in front of you at 94 here. Number 4, what's your percentage of 2-factor authentication use, which at this point should be 100%. But unless we watch these things, gaps and security issues open up. So that's my proposition to you in thinking about measuring these things as you evolve your security approach. There is additional support if you feel that patching is just too boring and we can never get good at it and the staff doesn't want to do it and whatever. Just keep in mind that insurers like Chubb, which is a serious cyber insurer, this is a cut and paste from their documentation. Gives you only what they call a 45-day grace period. So if your CVEs cause the exploit or are involved in the exploit, once that 45-day grace period expires, they reduce your claim amount by 50% at 45 days and 75% at 90. So there's an economic underscore here that says we've got to keep patching. We talked about everything else is a difficult area because there's not much documentation on it. And the fact that it's number 2 is just a fact of life. There's nothing we can do about that. Previous examples include things like physically tampering with ATM machines, gas pumps, skimmers. Some of our clients are involved in this sector of gas station and hospitality with these 7-Eleven type stores. It does include environmental breaches like fire, hurricane, tornado that impact paper documents. So it's a very general category. Many of these, everything else, came from general breach notification letters that I suspect you as individuals get fairly often. I probably got 10 last year where somebody has stolen my data from somebody. And Verizon reminds us that if we had more robust information sharing practices and regulations, that would help. They are stymied if there's not enough information being sent. Social engineering is number 3. Here the motive is financial gain at about half. That's way down from last year. The data loss is internal. Internal data, Verizon defines as sensitive plans, reports, and email. This does not include social security numbers. Does not include if they lose your name at a domestic violence shelter, that's what they call sensitive data. So this is what they call internal data, 68%. Espionage is now improved based on improved data assessment, so they think this is a data issue rather than a trend at 52%. Prompt bombing is interesting, and baiting. The prompt bombing, is when users are bombarded by MFA login requests. And this was responsible for some amount of social engineering breaches during the data period. Baiting is where compromised versions of legitimate software are planted using SEO or ad purchasing. Your unsuspecting users might download malware instead of some fancy browser extension that they intended. So those are some of the trends to think about as you evolve your security approach. You know all about the definition of social engineering, those tactics to exploit our human nature to trust and help. Pretexting continues as number 2. This next slide is actually one of 2 slides which I've kept from prior years in the Verizon report. Verizon has lots of great information in some of the questions it asks, but at some point you have to retire the deck and move on. These are 2 that I've kept open. These are steps in social engineering incidents. Now, there are 3 steps here that are being shown. One is initial access, one is breach escalation, and the other is results. So what this is telling us is that we've got to be good to prevent initial access for hacking against servers and also social against people. You got to be good at that. But what if you're not? Then you have to be good at these 2 things, one of which is the same, in order to prevent a breach escalation. That's malware against server. What if you don't catch them at that point? Then you've got to be good at these 3 things. Do you see where layers is everything? This graph opened my eyes when it came out last year. This is for social engineering. They have the same kind of steps for system intrusion and others, but it's not important what they are. It's important that they're different through the different levels, which means layers are important. No one layer is going to stop this or other incidents. Moving on to BECs, which are business email compromises. I expect all of you see this on a daily basis or near daily basis, depending on the size of your environment. The average transaction is 50%. $50,000. Got distracted there for a moment. Is $50,000 and has stayed there. So we are seeing some seemingly cap on the 50,000. So I guess that's good news. And I have a theory as to why that's happened, and that is the cyber insurance limits that you can purchase for social engineering claims are a small subset. These sublimits are a small part of the insurance policy. So even mid-sized businesses like us might have a couple $1 million in cyber insurance coverage, but the social engineering portion of that is either 100K or 250. So you can have 3 claims a year and be above your claim limit for BECs, business email compromises. So that probably is setting a cap on what the hackers can get from you. Let's talk about phishing for a moment. Is phishing worthwhile? Is it working? Is it helping? So Verizon says, let's try to understand report rates. Report rates are when the staff clicks a button that says this email is fraudulent. So they take report rates and they plotted it against training status. These folks down here trained within the last 30 days. These folks did not. So the 21% is for those that have trained in the last 30 days, 5% are not. So if you're having difficulty with upper management with your phishing campaigns, they're too intrusive, they're too expensive, we don't want to spend time on it, whatever the story is, there is data, quite a bit of data in today's presentation that supports moving on from that and hitting the button that says, let's do some phishing training and campaigns. So improving phishing campaigns is something we work a lot on. We find that weekly phishing is important in our experience and in the know-before data. We actually trust the know-before data probably just below the Verizon level. So we actually make decisions based on it. Know-before, which you know is the leader in the phishing campaigns software. They analyzed 10 years of records from about 60,000 customers. That's 32 million separate users, took 500 million phishing tests, and they took training at least once a year. They found the more frequently groups test, the better they performed on the simulated phishing tests. We find that also. And Verizon data, the know-before data should be unbiased because they don't get any more money if you fish more often. It's all fixed costs. They found that groups with weekly tests are 2.8 times more effective reducing risk than those with quarterly. We do have some customers that are still stuck on quarterly or bi-monthly, and they're not feeling the power of know-before or whatever software you picked. So we're suggesting that you evolve by identifying the risky groups and fish them twice weekly, just like we do here internally. Those are your HR folks, your accounting folks, CFO, and so on. Since phishing risk, we know, is non-uniform across roles. We're also reminded that template choice is very important. I'm using old Verizon data here. This graph shows you that depending on what phishing template you used, the phishing results will be very different. And I don't know if I have today's data, more data in today's presentation, but we've seen this also, where if you change the strength of your phishing campaign, your phish-prone percentage goes up until everyone's educated, and then it comes back down again. So turn on your AI engine if your know-before has their top-level package, which doesn't cost much more than their bottom-level package, has an AI engine. So the software chooses the right template for each user based on title, phishing history, and so on. Use the phish-prone scores when looking at the per user, because that score includes the title, phishing history, how long the person's been with the company, and so on. So, and then escalate, this is an important one, and escalate those with a high phish-prone score, what staff, to their manager for conversations using the phrasing, "You are endangering our firm." We've had these conversations internally, and our clients have. They're very effective. And of course, escalate those not completing phishing remediation. We do have some clients that still don't escalate those non-completion. So here's the screenshot on the know-before AI. They call it AIDA, A-I-D-A. You have to turn it on. You also have to have lots of different categories. AI is not very interesting if you only have one or two categories. So that's another common problem we see as we set up and reset up our customers' know-before phishing campaigns. We do have a fixed price offer if any of you are not satisfied with your phishing campaigns. If you can't get it down to below the average for your industry, which of course know-before reports, don't hesitate to let us know. It's not very expensive. We've done it many times. Here's the graph I was referring to earlier. When we turned on this in this particular sample, this is a 55-person sample. This is real life data, so we don't have to pretend that our manufacturer's data is unbiased. We have our own data. So when this customer turned on the AI phishing template, you can see the phish-prone percentage went up and then went back down again as people learned from it. That last period right here is 17 weeks at 0. But whenever you have new hires, you're going to have a bump. And of course, if you haven't started your phishing campaigns or that you've turned them off for a while, everyone starts at around 20, 23% here on the left-hand side. I've given you a lot today to think about, a lot to work on. Do know that there are solutions, and this is one of the places we find our solutions to help our clients. These are the CIS controls. So Verizon has mapped which CIS control goes to which pattern. Remember, social engineering is the number 3rd pattern in the North American organizations. So if you are having trouble with social engineering and you want to make inroads on it, you have to pull up CIS control number 5 and number 6 and 14 and 17 and read what they mean. If you want to see an example of it, it's on the screen right here. This is CIS control 14. And Verizon and the rest of the industry says you really need to get good at the first column. That's IG1. This is really for DoD contractors and so on over here on the right-hand side. So there are some detail as to what to work on, and that's what the CIS controls help us with. For better or for worse, I'm changing subjects slightly here. You know that the insurance companies have all the data, all the claims data, so they know exactly what goes wrong. And we've never been able to, pull it out of them on a detailed basis. Although the next webinar I'm doing coming up at the end of May does focus on what the insurance companies are thinking and saying because they have all the data, so we might as well focus on it. This is the traveler's underwriting questions. So one of the things we have to do, of course, is to meet our cyber insurance criteria in order to get a quote, reasonable quote. And we have to keep it in place. It's not easy to do. So if you tell the insurance company that all of your workstations are BitLockered, but you fail to have a metric to keep it in place, some system, some process, that's a problem. And of course, you have to recover and do it again next year during renewal. So what we've developed is a quick glance dashboard. It is about 66 lines long. You're seeing just a little snip of it up here on the screen. And this dashboard is incorporated in our quarterly business reviews with our managed clients. Keeping this in your head, of course, is completely impossible. You couldn't possibly keep 66 lights in your head. And by the way, there is another dashboard for infrastructure. This is just for security. And over time, we help our clients move from red light to yellow light to green light, indicating what criteria is being met here in this third column. There is actually a board version of this also for senior management that you can excerpt from this for board presentations. So having the discipline processes is an evolution for some of us. And to be able to advise the board as to what risk is being incurred in the operations, I think is a very important part of your management. So there's quite a bit of evolutionary thoughts here in this slide. But developing your own dashboard may be the first step. Part of the quick glance dashboard talks about tactical things like only allowing sign-ins from enrolled devices, which you know is an Intune feature. Those of you who are into management know that these lights could be a very important part of your management style. You know that red you run toward and try to fix, yellow you keep an eye on, green you take a long lunch break. But these lights could be very helpful in directing our attention. Some of them are no-cost thoughts, but still urgent, disappearing from business social media, especially for those that are newly onboarded. I suspect you know by now that the hackers are watching LinkedIn to see who your new assistant is, who the new IT person is, and they take it out on them in a record amount of time, short amount of time. Another just common sense thought that comes out of these quick glance dashboards, again, this is part of the 66 lines, these are just excerpts from them, is as you do acquisitions and as you change your own internal systems, are you, after a while, deleting the old data? Because if you lose that data, then you've got a reporting problem and a PR problem and a bigger insurance claim and so on. But if it's deleted because you changed your system 4 years ago and no one cares about the old data, or you took it offline. So we're having some fun with our managed clients, reducing their data risks and their storage requirements for that matter, although that's not the driver, just by deleting old CRM systems that came over in acquisitions, systems that you outgrew and deleted, but the data's still there. Because when you lose that data, it just gives you all the downside with no upside. To finalize today's presentation, if you do nothing else with today's work, I've got a few more slides. Make sure your SAN snapshots are working. SAN snapshots have saved some of our non-managed clients, and some of them, it got pretty desperate. In the middle of the night, if you don't have your SAN snapshots, it is a very difficult and long recovery process versus those that do. Of course, to do that, you've got to have your SAN. I have this chart in front of you. This chart begs the question, what is the comfort level of my organization from a security point of view? Every organization is different. And so let's take, for example, Fidelity Investments, Schwab, Vanguard, whatever your favorite investment house is. When I go to the Fidelity office every couple of years just to see the people, very nice people, very heavily trained in Towson, they're working very slowly, because probably 50% productivity, because Fidelity has their security turned up to the maximum level. And you would do the same thing if you were managing $7 trillion of other people's money. But that's not the organizations we deal with, and there's lots of other security comfort levels besides Fidelity, Vanguard, and Schwab. So for you to sit down with this chart or any chart and figure out what your comfort level is and map them to solutions, I think is a very important part of our roles. And it also certainly prioritizes the work that we do. We can't do everything at one time. So I've labeled this chart as basics in yellow. Basics means when you wake up in the morning and you do not have these things pinned down, it could be a very bad day. I'm not telling you which day is going to be a bad day. It's just going to be sometime. Strong 2FA is certainly part of it. Disk encryption in Maryland, at least, does give you an absolute defense against reporting if your disk encryption and your computer's off. We also have plenty in research at any given time. Microsoft managed conditional access, browser sync control, which we got under control, passwordless authentication using QR codes. In the back office, we're always working on something in the labs. So now we have the same chart in front of us, but focus for those that are having difficulty transitioning to IT at home, users at home. There's a whole different set of criteria and emphasis areas. Disk encryption is certainly one of them because people are moving between home and office. DNS filtering is another one because DNS filtering normally happens at the firewall level. Well, if people are working from home, they're outside the firewall. So those are just a couple good examples of different emphasis for those that are working from home. Now, what does Verizon say about working from home? This is a complicated discussion. So Verizon says with regard to stolen credentials, they performed credential analysis, log analysis, on the InfoStealer malware. So it revealed that about 30% of the compromised systems were enterprise licensed devices. Okay, 30%. However, 46% of those 30% compromised had corporate logins in their compromised data. I'm sorry, half of those compromised systems that had the corporate logins in their compromised data were non-managed and hosted both personal and business credentials, both. They're likely result of a bring your own desktop program, which should be we should have ruled out by now, or are enterprise-owned devices being used outside of policy. This is some scary data here. So let me just one more time. 30% of the compromised systems could be identified as enterprise devices. Roughly half of those were non-managed. I don't know how Verizon defines non-managed, and hosted both personal and business credentials. That's unfortunate. So we've taken some strong steps here internally to prevent this, and we're helping our managed clients do the same thing. One day I decided, well, this chart that Maury created, does it hold any water, or is it just made up? And I ran it against what's in scope for managed services, assuming you have Office 365 Business Premium or better licensing. And the answer is substantially, it's all within the scope of managed services. So apparently we're choosing the right items. There's still a few items that are out of scope. Not all of our clients can afford or want internal vulnerability scans. Same thing with penetration testing. So there's still a few things that are out of scope, but it's largely in scope for our managed clients. Those of you who have tight budgets, we respect that. It is a difficult environment at the moment. We're uncertain whether the economy is going up or going down, or at the same time, so that there may be room for cost savings. I created a fourth chart, same chart, but highlighted the ones that are really no money involved. These are just discipline thoughts. These are having the right amount of staffing, because the marginal cost, less than $1 a month per user for DNS filtering, for data loss prevention, of course, which is largely part of the licensing, for strong 2FA, which is largely cheap unless you're using Duo. So there's a lot of areas here that really are not a money issue, all the green ones. Now, we do all this talk of work just makes me kind of crazy, because I may not be able to go home at 5:30 or 6 or 6:30. So now that begs the question, who should do this work? All this extra work that we're talking about today. Verizon, this is not a Verizon thought, this is a Gartner thought. Gartner, you know, is the grandfather of research in the IT industry, and they have a model called Run, Grow, Transform. And here's what the model tells us. And the model tells us, first of all, the model axis is competitive advantage on the x-axis and business knowledge on the y-axis. That's how much knowledge do I need of your organization in order to execute whatever IT task we're talking about. And Gartner also reminds us that not all IT tasks are created equal. So let's throw up some examples. Let's say you're in charge of putting in a new business dashboard, a BI dashboard. That's right here, because a BI dashboard, if you implement it properly, gives you lots of competitive advantage and also requires lots of knowledge of your environment. That's why it's in the upper right-hand corner. Let's say you're focusing on Microsoft 365 backups or configurations or backups in general. That's in the lower left-hand corner. That gives you very little competitive advantage and also does not require a lot of intimacy with your environment. So different IT tasks are in different sectors. Or if you're putting a new ERP system in, that would be up here in the upper right-hand corner. So Gartner then overlays the Run, Grow, Transform model, where transform activities are in the upper right-hand corner and the run activities are in the bottom left-hand corner. Gartner says those activities in the bottom left-hand corner are called run, you outsource those. The ones in the upper right-hand corner, you own those. The ones that it takes to grow the 10 or 12% a year that most organizations grow, you partner with it. It goes back and forth. So that's helpful in trying to understand who should do this work. Now, there's plenty of other things going on here, including the fact that top management is calling all day long to ask you how that top priority transform project is doing, but all the money and the personnel in your organization, in your IT departments, are tied up down here in the bottom left-hand corner doing run activities. That dichotomy makes our jobs even harder. Now, there's other thoughts here too. In fact, you would hope that the run activities in the bottom left-hand corner are dropping each year as we get more efficient. Turns out the data doesn't support that. Moving on to a recap, I'm recommending you evolve your security approach using 3 thoughts, big picture thoughts. One is using the latest data from the Verizon data breach report. You can pick it up online. If you'd like us to send you a link, just put it on your evaluation. It is 117 pages, so there is some reading to be done. And I will have a full Verizon webinar at 1 month from now. Adopting a disciplined approach to make your organization a harder target. You don't have to be NSA, CIA, FBI. You just have to be a harder target than the next guy. The hackers love the soft targets. It's our job to make sure that we're not one of them. And reaching out to us or somebody if your people process tools aren't sufficient. We do find people who have, for example, people and process but lack the tools. And we find others have the process and tools but lack the people for various reasons. You've got to have all 3 to make this security approach work. That ends the meat of the presentation, but I asked Michelle Robinson, our Learning Center head, to put some system source security training and discount it for you. It's on the screen in front of you. It'll be part of your deck later on this afternoon if you'd like to take a closer look at some of the security courses in the Learning Center. But now we have time. We've got about 6 minutes left to ask about IT. I'll take questions in the question box. If you've tried some things, they've worked or didn't work, that's very helpful. If something makes sense, needs clarification, doesn't make sense, that's helpful also. When you registered today, you did put some questions in. I'll be using first names only just to protect the innocent. Brett, you were talking about, among other topics, I'm interested in preventing hacks by careless users opening messages from unknown senders. You've hit it right on the nose there. Remember that the human related is 60% of the breaches. And hopefully you saw some tips today, especially tuning up your KnowBe4 or whatever package you're using for your training and your phishing campaigns. It turns out, Brett, you're asking a great question. It turns out that know before and other packages are actually fairly worthless unless you configure them properly. That may be true of your accounting software also, so I probably shouldn't make it an outlier. But if they're not configured properly, and you know, if any of you have stuck your head into the Know Before portal, you know that there's plenty of configuration options. It is not straightforward at all. But if they're not configured in according to best practices, it's just barely worth owning. It's kind of interesting. Andrew, welcome today. I got your voicemail yesterday. Thank you very much. Data from the Verizon breach and how AI is involved in security mitigations. You saw at least a few slides on that, but it is not the ultimate threat. Now you're part of the government operation, so perhaps you see it in a different way, but not the ultimate threat. At least using the data period that Verizon used in the past year and the one before it. Joseph, more about newest threats, maybe a better way to secure. I hope you got something today from the presentation that would solve that thought. Pete, welcome today. Security ideas to help me improve our environment. I hope you found a couple things at least where that are actionable and will help protect ourselves, including the question we asked earlier, the IT management question. 4 questions, 4 times a year. My supposition, it would cut security incidents immediately in half. Phish prone percentage, backup completion, 2FA, and whatever the 4th one was. I'll take other questions. I'll be quiet for a moment if you want to type one in. If there are no other questions, I'll turn the 3 minutes back to you, and I appreciate your time very much. I hope you enjoyed today. We will have a survey after this webinar, and we use your feedback to help us improve, so don't hesitate to return the survey. And thanks for your time. Have a good afternoon.